Hey, welcome to the channel today. If you watched my first video, you know I just moved over to Poland for school, and I was thinking a lot about some of the videos I watched when I was moving here, and what was lacking, or what I wish I'd heard more of before moving, or just wishing that there was more videos out there in general. So today I just kind of want to discuss the general gist of moving over to Europe for school. Maybe in the future I'll go a little more specific on certain countries, but today I'm just going to talk about moving over to Europe in general for school. I think the biggest thing of all is just getting over that kind of fear, especially if you've lived in the U.S. for your entire life. This is kind of a U.S. based perspective, but if you lived in the U.S. your entire life, or even somewhere else abroad outside of Europe, it can seem pretty daunting. The first time I came here, I came over for study abroad in Paris, and I remember getting in the taxi and realizing I had no effing idea what I would do if, because the program director picked us up from the station, put us in a taxi, and told him to take us to our place. And I just remember thinking, oh, like I didn't know almost any French at that point, and I was just thinking, if this guy doesn't take me to the right spot, or this or that, I have no effing clue what I'm going to be doing. But it all worked out well. It was an amazing experience, and I think it's one of those things that you really grow from. So to get into it, just get over those fears. It's going to be an awesome time, no matter where you go in the world. Everyone's friendly, and if anything, sometimes it's an advantage coming from abroad because people are interested in you just in the same way you'd be interested in them if you were coming from a different country. So the biggest thing that I didn't really know before I came to Europe, or at least before I started looking into coming over to school in Europe, was there's a ton of programs now, whether it's bachelor's, master's, PhD programs, that are all in English. So, that's one of the biggest barriers that comes up right away. You think, okay, I can't go to France or Poland or Norway or Sweden or Germany or wherever it may be because I don't speak the language. But less and less so, that's not even an obstacle anymore. English has almost to some degree become a language of education. It's a language where so many people know it as their kind of second language that it works out well for colleges to make sure that they can get as many students in as possible under kind of that common umbrella. And they're very good programs. I would definitely look into it. I mean, almost any school you can think of, from the littlest school down to the biggest school, has programs in English now. So language is not a barrier if that's what you're kind of fearing. Cost. I'm sure you've heard this, but cost is a big benefit coming over here for sure. I'm spending a fraction of what I would have spent in the U.S., and it feels pretty good. It's going to vary from country to country. The U.K. Tends to be, and Ireland specifically, tend to be much closer to the U.S., where they're going to have similar prices. Although they have a lot of, let's say, master's programs, I think shorter bachelor programs as well that are only about a year. So, or not the bachelor's, but the master's programs are only about a year. So, in a sense, you're saving money that way. But the outside the UK, the majority of other countries, once again, I'll probably go into it a little more in depth. But a lot of the other countries throughout Europe have much more affordable prices, if even really having anything more than a fee itself. So that's the biggest thing. And kind of go along with that, funding. Coming from the U.S., a lot of times you may be worried, okay, even if it is cheap, I still got to pay for the flight, still got to pay for the, room and board, all that fun stuff. And that, once again, may not be as big an issue as you think. I'll attach it down below in the description, the link. This is something I actually looked into when I was coming over here that I wasn't aware of, and that's that federal student loans. There's actually, it's not all schools over here, but there's quite a large list for almost every country in Europe of schools that either fall under, they will fully, well, if it's a master's, they'll fully fund your education to a certain degree, depending on what the loan limit is. But with how cheap most of the schools are over here, relatively, that you never really break that loan limit. Um, and then funding for bachelor's as well. But there's a whole list. Just go through it. It's an entire spreadsheet. It breaks down every single country, what colleges are eligible. Some are only eligible so that it's basically deferring any student loans you might already have. So, like, let's say you're coming here for a master's program, it'll defer the loans, so you're not having to pay while you're here. But it's not good. They won't fund, at least the way I read into it, they won't fund um, that program for you. But there's a lot of programs here that they'll can be fully funded for masters, and then probably partially so for bachelors. But once again, with how cheap they are, it might cover the full cost. So I'm here for a master's myself, so I know a little less about the bachelor side of things. But that's a big additive as well, because if you're just worried, I don't know if I can afford it. I don't know if I have, even if it is cheap, I don't know if I have the ability to go over. Look at that list, and it's very good schools. I mean, pretty much all the schools on there are some of the top schools in all those countries. So you're looking at very, very good schools that you can have partial, or if not all, of your expenses paid for through the same kind of federal loan program you would go through for a school in the U.S., and that's extremely helpful. The one thing I would say is that, and I noticed this a lot more, I just moved here for school in Poland, so I can't entirely speak for it, but I think I've noticed similar things already. And then when I was in France, the one thing is it's an awesome experience, and so many of these places are in beautiful old cities that you'll just have an amazing time in. But I would temper some expectations at times. You're not going to have the same, or not necessarily every country. I know the UK, some of the Nordic countries are more similar to the US in that way, but a lot of the other European countries, you're not having that central campus that you do in the US, where it's all one organism and there's the dorms there and everyone just kind of living in this little community. It tends to be more here where you're living throughout the city. There's maybe different buildings spaced out throughout the city, so it's maybe less of a community. And it can be, once again, a lot of fun. You're going to meet a lot of great people, but you don't always have the same. You're not having maybe school sports teams and all this stuff that you're so accustomed to in the U.S. But once again, it's just a trade-off. You're going to have an amazing time with so many other experiences you'll have. But yeah, I mean, those are some of the biggest things I can think of. I think in future videos, I'm going to go into kind of a more country by country basis on how to, really get into it. But the big things now are just, don't be afraid to apply. Worst case, you don't come, but, never hurts to try. I've been loving it here so far. I've been living here for a short time, but it's amazing. And costs, you're going to save a lot of money. There may be ways for you to fund it even through federal loans, even though you are overseas. Yeah, wishing you the best. Hope you look into it, and thanks for watching.